Hey everyone, welcome to another great episode of Content and Conversation. Today I'm excited to be welcoming Kameron Jenkins of Soapboxly, founder of boutique content marketing agency and also SEO wordsmith at the respected SEO software suite Moz. And today we're excited to be talking about the business of SEO and content. Welcome, Kameron.
Thank you for having me.
So Kameron, you've done a lot of great articles and blog posts on communicating the value of SEO and content marketing and also just how to deal with your clients. So I think is a good starting point. I'd love to hear how do you think people should communicate the value of that internally or externally, and how do you do it?
It's a good question. I think over a lot of years dealing with clients, that's why I tend to write about that so much, is there's very much like this element where you can do really good work, but if you're not communicating it, it's like that's everything. Your clients really need to be able to see your value if you're going to stay on. Even if you're doing great work, they could cancel your contract if if they're not understanding and you're not filling in those gaps. So I always like to try to explain that SEO is a tool. It's a tool to get you something else. It's a means to an end. So a lot of times clients can tend to focus on SEO as like this keyword, you got me ranked for this keyword, and that's really exciting. It's exciting until they have to review their budget and then they realize like, okay, I'm spending a lot of money and it's not clear to me how much I'm making in return.
Okay.
So we've had a lot of, like in my past, the clients I've worked on, when there's like that black hole, they kind of tend to say like, well, I don't see the value in SEO. Like, yes, you got me ranked for this keyword. You got me like all of these backlinks. You got me all this traffic. If they can't kind of connect the dots and see how SEO was a tool to get them something else, revenue and business growth, then, it's going to be bad news for the content marketer or the agency or whatever. So I always try to say SEO is a tool. Sometimes there are businesses who, they say, I'm not even going to invest in SEO, and I've never invested in SEO because they don't see it as a revenue driver. They see it as a total like cost center and not a profit center at all. So there are some people who are just like, I've never done SEO. I just don't see why I would need to do it, because to them, marketing is like paid media. And that's all it is. So that I've dealt with those clients before too. And I think it's important to show them that like, no, organic is a channel just like your other channels, and it can drive your business growth too. So just, I guess all of that to say like SEO is a tool, it's a means to an end. And it's just good to be able to show clients that whole journey from like how SEO can connect them to what they want.
So in that initial, like say client setup, and you mentioned that maybe black box in the middle of like keywords and then revenue. So are you asking would you suggest for people's like initial client engagement setup, like we have to have a period of like goal setup or setting up value per conversion and things like that? Like are you asking for that up front or charging for that also out of curiosity? Like how would you suggest people go about doing that?
I think it's good to start with like a research phase, and I'm guilty of this too. We're just wanting to dive right in. I think clients get really excited too. They just want to see stuff right away. They want you to just dive right in, and it can be hard to say, hold up, we're going to pause for a little bit. We're going to research. We need to know who you are. We need to know about your customers, like how much money do you make per customer, so you can assign values to goals. And I think it's important to do that and explaining to the client that, look, this is going to help you see the revenue we're helping you generate, because believe us, like you're going to want to know this after a while. You might just want to see content right away. You might just want to see links right away. But eventually, trust us, you are going to want to see like your return on that investment, and doing this research is going to help us do that.
Okay. In your ideal report, and it probably depends per client, like what are the main KPIs you're kind of reporting on from a content marketing perspective?
It's interesting because I'm kind of trying to ideate on that right now. Just having just started my agency, I kind of get to like, it's exciting. I get to like, this is what I want reports to be. Whereas in the past, it's kind of like, working at other companies, it's like they use standard reporting software or platform. It's like, that's just kind of what we're working with. But now I'm like, ooh, I get to like,
define your own path.
Define like what I think is wise for reports. And I think I've been talking to a lot of other people about this too. And we're all kind of the same mentality that like, you really need to start with goals, and then the reports need to reflect that. Because one thing that can happen is that, well, not only do your clients not really see your value if you kind of have standard reports that don't reflect on their goals, but I think it's a good way to be able to show them like, this is relevant, don't ignore this. Because the second your client sees something in your report that like doesn't matter to them and doesn't matter to their goals. Clients tend to ignore report. They're busy, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think like doing that goal setting, that research phase, like we were talking about up front, and then kind of choosing the KPIs that best reflect that is really important. But as far as like standard reports, there's like the 3 pillars I always start with, which is rankings, traffic, and conversions.
Okay.
And then from there you can kind of modify depending on their needs. At least that has worked for me in the past. Like those are like the 3, it shows like that full journey from like rankings to conversions and kind of shows the full, like connects it to revenue, your activity revenue, and lots of like stuff that you can't control can come in the middle, but it's still, I think, a good idea to kind of
show all of it. Yeah, I think that's smart. One thing I say to clients because SEO obviously is a long-term game. So, but you have lagging indicators and you have leading indicators. So, and basically what you're describing, even if you're not getting revenue like month 1, month 2, 3, if you know what you're doing, hopefully keyword rankings even if they're going from like 40 to 30 to 25, you're showing progress that you know what you're doing, and at least that's a goal you can point to, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's good to show progress. Like that's totally the case where a lot of clients can be antsy, and that totally makes sense, especially if they're coming from that more paid media background where they're used to like pay to play.
Yeah.
They are used to seeing results like I pay for it, I get it. Like what else?
Yeah,
what
direct
else
response
would happen?
kind of setup. Yeah.
Exactly. But with people who aren't as used to organic, and even people who are used to organic, like we're all just antsy people. We want to see like the fruits of our labor quickly. But as long as you can show progress, I think that's really, really key. Just maybe you're not getting it month 1, month 2, but as long as you're kind of like on that trajectory and showing them that, I think it's valuable.
That's good. Yeah, one thing we do in both the sales process and just ongoing is use Ahrefs and SEMrush's like traffic cost, traffic value for content and for links. So one thing I've just started playing with recently is showing like if the average traffic value in this market is like 1,000 per month for a content asset, I would say the lifetime value might be 24,000, 2 years of ranking, which I think is reasonable. And if you invest 2,000 in that post, it's pretty good ROI, and you can like focus on the ROI type return on content marketing. I think it's a much easier argument to sell content to people.
Yeah, I totally agree. I definitely love those kind of tools in within Ahrefs and stuff, and I think that's a really easy way to be able to like show value.
Yeah, so on client communication, it seems like you've just got that down to a T. Is there a typical tempo that you suggest with new clients? Like, do you say, let's jump on the phone weekly, or you're sending a weekly update? Like, what do you recommend for people?
That's really interesting, and I'm still kind of trying to figure that out. I think there are, I don't know, after a while you can kind of start to like get a sixth sense about clients.
Even how much they want to hear
yeah,
from you.
like you can just kind of, like I have a client, you know, right now, and I just kind of have a feeling, I'm like, she's going to want to know. Like she's gonna want to hear from me like soon, and you can kind of just tell. Like it's been a couple of days, she's probably gonna want an update. And I don't know if that's always true or not, but I think it's important to kind of listen to that sixth sense and kind of know your client and know how much they want to hear from you. But if you want to scale and have any kind of like repeatable process, which I think is important, you probably should make it a little bit more structured, so there's not like that scope creep of they're wanting to get on the phone with you all of the time. Because I think everyone's had those clients that are like, I want to hear from you all the time. Let's hop on the phone. I have a question. I have an idea. And they kind of just monopolize all of your time. And then your poor other clients just don't get as much time and attention. So that, I mean, has to be managed. But I think as far as baking that into the contract or anything like that, it might be wise to just say, like, I think, you know, we could do like a monthly call, depending on like the scope of how much you're working on them, how complicated it is, how much you need their input. You might say, I think it's wise to do like a monthly call. Or you might say, I think we should really be touching base every week. Like I have a client who we have a joint Slack channel now because it's very much like a collaborative process. So we're kind of communicating always.
Wow.
That might not work for everyone, but again, it comes down to like, what is your arrangement with a client? What do they need from you? And how intense is it? You know?
Yeah, that makes sense. We've occasionally thought about getting kind of looped in Slack, and I would have concerns about the boundary setting on stuff like that. Like, can they ping you at any time? I guess if you just start setting an expectation that you don't respond in 2 seconds, is that kind of... Hopefully your client doesn't hate you for what they
Yeah.
if they see that.
I know. No, I love this client.
Yeah.
And I think it was a really good move to be able to do it that way. Just for their particular needs, it was very much like we kind of needed to be working together. But I am kind of that mentality where it's just like, I'm not going to drop everything I'm doing to answer this right now. It's nice for, to be able to stay in touch. But same with email. I try to answer my emails, at certain times during the day because it's so easy for me to just be in that like customer service mentality. I'm like, within 2 seconds, I am going to drop what I'm doing and email you back because I want to make clients happy and I want to do that. But I also know that long run, they're not going to be happy if all I'm doing is spending time on their emails.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I think, that's good. That is a good balance. We try and set the standard, and we do get compliments on our communication, like respond in 24 hours. And if it's a giant email they send you with like client feedback or something like that, you can even say, just want to confirm receipt on this. I'll get back to you why. And I think that's a good way to like walk the balance of, I'm not going to drop everything, but still be a good resource. Hopefully.
Yeah, I agree. I've done that before too, where it's going to take a little bit more time, and clients usually just want to know like you exist
What's
on
happening.
The other end of it. Like,
true.
hey, like, do you got it? Like, so you could just say something like you said, hey, I'm looking into this, but here's this for now. Just something to let them know, like we're on it,
We're
but
working.
we're working on it.
Yeah,
we're doing something.
That probably is a fear. It is probably reality for some agencies. Is like some companies are kind of like not doing very much for whatever their retainer is, and that is the fear of probably any client who signs you. Am I actually paying this person to do something?
Exactly. I think that's a totally valid fear, and valid. I don't know. I understand at least.
And sometimes it happens. A lot of agencies will overcommit or oversign to what they can actually deliver on. If you're selling consulting, especially, you might say you're doing something. And I know a lot of your background was working in a local. Like, was there any extent of? I know like some companies, to make that work, they got to assign like 30 local companies and manage all of them. Someone's getting the short end of the stick, right?
Yeah, the more you have and the more you're trying to do that, there's a risk of that. And I think clients just want to know that they want tangible stuff. In my experience, they usually just want to be able to see stuff, which it's hard. Sometimes the work you're doing isn't tangible. Like if you're just doing research, it's hard to be able to communicate to them in a way that it excites them and makes them feel comforted knowing that like I'm paying for something. So if you say, I spent today researching for you, they're like, well, what gives? Like I want more than that. I think at a certain degree, it's like good to be able to show them like I did A, B, and C today. So they do kind of know that something's going on. Yeah.
So on the, as part of communication, reporting obviously is a huge part, and there's some people spend a lot of time on reports, they don't get read. How do you suggest people make the reports more actionable and useful for their clients?
I think one, with reports, it's important to be able to kind of what we were talking about before, make sure it's all relevant. Make sure the reports actually reflect their KPIs and reflect the things that they care about. I think it's also important to couple that with insights, because I know like a lot of reports that I've seen is just numbers and they're like, here you go, bye. And they don't like spend any time talking to the client about what this means. So if you don't have time to hop on a call or that's not part of your process, then I would say at least like write out your insights. Say like, here is this, like here's your traffic, here's why we think it's higher or lower or whatever, and actually pull out an insight. So I think that can help clients actually get meaningful information from the reports instead of just being like, that's a pie chart, I don't care. So I think that's a good one to do, and segmenting things meaningfully and just making sure that because reports can be confusing if you just plop stuff on there, you clutter it too much, they get information overload. There's a lot of ways you can do it.
Reports. Or do it well. Yeah, one of the things I suggest with our team is often bring the TLDR into the email actually, which feels like a waste because you built this template that looks good. But I think as content marketers also make your reports like a blog post, make it enjoyable to look through, and hopefully they'll actually pull out the insights than the reverse, right?
You think about a long email, I even do that in long emails sometimes. Like if you're running short on time, here's what I need you to know. And then here's fully fleshed out. Sometimes I'll do that. But like you said, making it a blog post kind of mentality of you're communicating something. Reports are really like a form of communication. I think a lot of people just think of it as something they have to do, or it's just data. And that's not what clients are paying you for. They're paying you for insights. They want to know what this means. Like, you tell me what this means. And I think thinking about it as a form of communication, like this is you talking to your client just in a different way.
Yeah.
I think think with that, and then your reports will hopefully be more meaningful.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
On that note, I think there's different, one thing our team that I've seen, Caroline Gilbert, who's our director of content strategy, that she likes doing bullet points in the email and also anywhere, because it's another one of those like TLDR things where you can just pull out insights into reports that are useful. And I do suggest we try as hard as we can to at least get on a call monthly. I don't know about you, but I think that is should be a bare minimum for any real size engagement, to at least hear their feedback. And the clients are busy, but if they can't give you 30 minutes, they probably shouldn't be paying a significant amount of money, I would think.
I agree. I completely agree. There are definitely clients that I've worked with in the past who, never open their reports, never get on the phone, and we think they're happy just because they're non-existent, like they're not complaining, and we're like, oh, cool, this client must be happy but those are always the ones that down the line they end up canceling just because they were never. So I think that's
not engaged.
Yeah, they're not engaged. I think that's just the importance of communication, either just on the phone, via reports, just some form of communication to upkeep that. I don't know. I just think it's so important because the client, if they're not engaged with you, it's easier for them to just be like, bye.
Yeah, that's true. That makes me think, one thing that's a common occurrence for some of our clients, especially in the early stages, they say certain things that just don't necessarily agree with. Maybe they want, we had one client who wanted to who cared about keywords instead of rankings as a total. That was the metric they tracked. And eventually I feel like a lot of those clients who are looking at the wrong thing, eventually they'll do the exact same thing, where 6 months, 12 months down the line, suddenly the ROI will be coming in question because it might have been fluffy day 1, but day 12 or month 12, not as much.
Right. That's exactly the case. I think when clients do focus on those SEO metrics or keywords or keyword rank position or for their pet keywords, and they don't actually care about its role in in making
business,
them money. Yeah. I think there have been a lot of clients I've worked with who are just really dead set on, they have these pet keywords, get me to rank for A, B, and C, and that's all I care about on page 1, number 1. And the more SEO immature type of clients, but it's really important to educate them on, okay, maybe you want to rank for these keywords, but there's no search volume, or maybe you want to rank for these keywords, but let's also pay attention to traffic and conversions and what that's getting you and its role in the
full
long
ecosystem.
Term. Yeah, because they might get excited at first, thank you got me ranking for this term, but then they won't care.
Does it actually drive value? Right, that makes sense. As a content marketer, and something we struggle with and try and continue to communicate the value of is the value of high quality content versus an Upwork or a text broker where you can buy an article for $150, but it is actually, again, driving what you actually want. So how have you found, been able to communicate that you should be investing in high quality versus going to those other avenues?
It's interesting because there are, I hate making sweeping generalizations, everyone on text broker is a bad writer. I definitely, if you're watching this and you are a writer on there, I definitely don't mean to say anything like that. But in my experience, we have, used text brokers and things like that in the past, just when we needed some extra help or whatever. And in my experience, it has been lower quality, and it has been, a lot of clients think that that's a good time saver too. I'll just outsource this and use you guys for the strategy or something like that. But really, you also have to be the one to ideate, think of all the ideas. And you also have to be the one to put in the requests into text broker or whatever and edit it and then post it. It's not, in my experience, it doesn't actually save you a ton of time because you still have to do something with it. So there's that. Quality aside, that's another thing I would tell clients is if you're considering this, think about all the stuff you still have to do. You're not putting your fingers to the keyboard, but you are doing a lot of other things that take time. But when it comes to quality, I think the nature of those platforms is really interesting because it's by nature low commitment on the writer's part. So the writer isn't invested in your company and they don't know your industry.
Right.
And I think when you get people that are just trying to make money on the side, or maybe that's their main income, but if they're not career writers, then they're just gonna pop in, work on, maybe 20 different businesses a day. What do you think they're not gonna be writing with subject matter expertise. They're not gonna be writing from a position where they know your company. And even the high quality writers I've gotten back on text broker and things like that are they still miss the mark when it comes to like, but that's not the business's tone. They didn't understand the subject matter, even though
Right.
it sounds okay. But if the client still doesn't kind of see that as like a potential reputation killer, I would just say like performance, like proof is in the pudding.
Yeah.
Just like compare the two together and see which one performs better, and then they can see for themselves what's worth it, what's not.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think those networks can still be a good like time saver to find a writer, but if you're consistently going back there and finding a new writer that's doing something different, almost certainly you're going to get those results. But I think if you use it as like, I'm going to dig in and find that 1 or 2 or 3 great writers that exist there that have my subject matter expertise, then maybe it can actually be a place of value.
I think, yeah, I've heard of people doing that where they find a writer that they really like and then they just say, let's not go through Upwork or Textbroker, like let's just work together. And I think that's great. I mean, if you find someone like that, that's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I think, and that's a lot of value of those networks is they just kind of shortcut and allow you to kind of like pick and choose and see samples and things like that. So you still have to put in the time, as you mentioned before, like there's not real time savings there. But in general, I think that's always going to be a shortcoming of those networks is that they invest in those things. But for our clients, one of the ways we sell, I actually want to do a better job. I literally had an aha this week of like, yes, you can go to Upwork and hire that one writer, but for us, like one piece of content might touch a graphic designer, content marketing specialist, content editor, art director, content marketing manager. I'm helping with strategy. Like that's 6 people, potentially sometimes more, photographer, that touch something, and that, I'm just hiring a writer. Why would I pay $1,500 for an article when I could pay $300?
Right. Suddenly,
maybe it becomes a little more illuminating.
Yeah, it's not, you're not just paying for words. I think a lot of time, it's interesting. Some projects are more like you're just writing maybe like a landing page for a client's website. They just need pages like home about, like, the standard pages, and maybe like that's a little bit more conducive to your text brokers and things like that. But if you're trying to do like a really great article that you're then trying to pitch to other like publications and get features and attract links, I think it makes a lot more sense when you see like this is words plus all of this other, it's part of a larger ecosystem.
It makes more sense. So I mean, it's clear from a lot of your writing that communication is like something you excel at. So curious if you have, if you were training someone on that or just common mistakes you see people make in the client communication process, like you touch on any of that I think people would find useful.
I think one of the main, in any kind of service-oriented business, the pitfall is just kind of dropping whatever you're doing and to please the client. So one of the biggest communication faux pas I see is just people just, okay, client, whatever you want. And then they just like kind of are always reacting to whatever the client wants. And it makes you kind of seem like you're not on top of things. It makes you seem like there's no trust on the client's part. I mean, the client's kind of dictating to you because they don't trust that you've got it, but then you're kind of reinforcing that by just saying, okay, whatever you want, and you're not ever driving your own strategy. So I think that kind of reinforces this distrust with a client relationship when you're only ever responding to them and their requests instead of just being like, okay, I've been thinking about your campaign proactively, or, guiding their ideas to something else. Like, okay, I hear where you're coming from, but what about this? And, actually acting as a consultant who has expertise. And I think being able to communicate to clients in a way that's not always like, oh, okay, whatever you want, like just reacting to their panic and their requests, just kind of coming at it from, speak with authority. It's okay to do that in a way that's like tactful and courteous to, they're paying you for that. So you don't always have to just be scared that like, oh, the client wants this, I should, it just makes you seem less prepared, and it kind of facilitates distrust. So that's one of the biggest ones, I would say. Yeah,
that reminds me, I actually shared one of your tips from one of your Whiteboard Fridays basically on exactly that subject with our team. And I 100% agree of like, clients hire you to really, in a way, disagree with them. They want your expertise. If you become reactive rather than proactive in those suggestions, you're eventually going to be, I would think, fired, or you're commoditized at least, right? So the tip I like from you, and I'm probably guilty of this, is clients will come to us and say something, and I'll just be like, that's wrong. That's wrong. You should be doing this instead. And I think if that rings a bell with what your tip was basically you had a better way of reframing it to be still like respect their opinion, but not, but still be proactive rather than reactive.
It's such a hard balance to do, because they can sometimes come to you with like an idea that they think is great and they're all excited about it, and they're invested. Like, you don't want to squash that, because anytime you can get a client who's excited enough to share an idea with you, you don't want to just ruin that, because oh my gosh, you crave that as like, because I've had enough clients who are just like not involved at all. They don't want any participation whatsoever. And so you want people like, yes, please talk to me, please participate in this, because it's your business and your marketing. I need you. I need your feedback. So in order to not squash that, but also kind of be able to implement your ideas and not just their non-expertise ideas, is to kind of take their ideas and just be like, okay, I see where you're coming from, but guide them to the correct solution, which is hard to do when they say something like, I want to do this. And you're like, that is a violation of Google's guidelines, or that is actually something I've seen be terrible for campaigns. And being able to say that, but also in a way that doesn't just make them feel bad for sharing something with you.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I another thing that you made me think of there is the idea, and Tom Critchlow shared this, and I forget the original source, but it's like in the client relationship, if you come in through strategy and then do deliverables in terms of writing and things like that, you're much more valuable on average than if they just came to you and said, we want this article, this case study, this white paper, etc. Because strategy, deliverables like that are commoditized, and while strategy is really what clients want at the end of the day, they want that expertise. They want you to tell them what they're doing is, not all of them want to tell you, but they value it, what I think is a good way.
I think so.
Yeah.
There are definitely some clients who kind of don't want that, and they kind of like at least some of the ones I've worked with. There's some that kind of just hire you and they see you as just like outsourced. Like, well, I would do this on my own, but I don't have time.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, like
that's that probably deliverable client.
Yeah,
and we get those too. It's like we just want links, and that's that commodity client. But
no, that's exactly right. There are those clients who kind of do want the pushback, and they're looking to you for advice. I mean, I think I had dealt with so many of those like just dictating clients that when you do get the clients who are like, no, you tell me, it's almost kind of shocking. Like, oh, you're trusting me? I mean, when you're at an agency and you can't pick your clients, you're going to get both. And so I, for a while, had been in that like pattern of dealing with those clients who are just like, do this, do this, do this. And it was like, okay, well, where's the line? Like, when do I get to kind of like say no, but in like in a nicer way. So it's just interesting. And then there's just all kinds of different businesses and ideas about SEO.
And you don't always know day one how they're exactly going to react, but the more you can kind of like qualify those in the sales process, the better. Some different client communication things I think of, we try and recommend people give clients like coffee and cake, is how we describe it. I went to some Seattle really good coffee shop where they literally walk around with chocolate cake. I don't know if you actually know.
That's amazing.
It's by it's by the fish market.
Next time I go up there,
I'll send it to you. But they walk around with coffee. You buy coffee and they walk around with chocolate cake.
That's so
and you're
cool.
shocked by the chocolate cake. And of course, all the reviews mention the chocolate cake. It's like the highest reviewed thing on Yelp. So for us, it's like we have a deliverable maybe of 3 assets a month or something like that. But then, hey, this part of your site, it looks bad, or in your situation, like even setting up goal conversions, stuff like that, maybe we're not paid to do that, but to get value from us, need to do stuff like that, right?
Yeah, I think that's totally crucial. It's just doing those extra things that you know is going to help the client, but not necessarily like, well, this isn't in your contract. You know, like go above and beyond. Yeah.
And one thing that another article I like from you is just the idea that we've been pushing our team more and more, because we are doing a lot of top middle funnel and like communicating conversions and things like that. We're like reporting on form fills and things like that. One of your tips was, it was really basic, not basic, but I think super crucial. That's why I liked it. I was like, this is simple. I can share it to my team, but it's super powerful in terms of actually putting, like, even for a B2B client, I know you service a lot of SaaS companies, tech, of like putting a dollar value on it. Like, how would you suggest people do that? I mean,
I mean, it's straightforward, like you're saying. It's like, oh my gosh, that's so basic. Why isn't everyone doing that? But when you start to dive in, you realize why not everyone is able to do it. I think Will Reynolds actually had a really good tip the other day, and it's something I think anyone can use when it comes to getting your customer, like your client's customer lifetime value of their customer, that can be really hard. And that's what you need to be able to,
Put a
have
dollar
goal value.
value.
Yeah, to put a dollar value on your lead forms and then their close rate as well. And I think it's really hard when you just say, hey client, what's your like average lifetime value of a customer? And they're like, oh, I don't know. Like it's such like how do you answer that unless you're like really mature and you have like a great, like, I just haven't run across a lot of clients who just know that right off the bat. And so Will's tip was, okay, start with like metric, like start with actual numbers. Like, okay, is it $1? Is it $1,000 or is it $10,000? And then the client will be like, well, it's not 10,000. Like, okay, so maybe like 1,000. They're like, oh, between like 100 and 1,000. Like, okay, like let's call it 500. And they're like, no, it's actually lower than that. But by giving those kind of like actual dollar values, you can help kind of like guide them toward at least something that's close, because otherwise you just never get it in my experience, because you ask them, they're like, well, let me try to find that information. They're never going to give it to you.
Yeah, that's true. In our process, we often, and it's probably to a detriment, is just use like traffic value, traffic costs. Like your competitor shows their traffic value is $200,000 a month. So that means someone's bidding that, but hopefully a sophisticated business is making more than that potentially. And I like that, at least of having that conversation and getting more sophisticated versus looking at the surface level stuff.
Yeah, and I think like those kind of tools are helpful too, just to be able to show your value in other ways. So another thing I like to do is go in, there might be plenty of ways to do this, but the way I do it is going into Google Search Console and you see your performance report, you see your keywords, and I have the Keywords Everywhere plugin. So what it will do is it overlays like a CPC column and it'll overlay like a traffic column next to that. So what you have in your Search Console is you have keyword, how many clicks it got, and then it overlays the CPC. So you just like cost per click, multiply that by the clicks that you got, and you say, here's how much you would have had to pay in PPC to get this free traffic that I got you. And I think that's another cool way to show your value. If you can't get goal conversions, like a conversion value, at least you could do something like that.
It's accurate versus the guess of the third-party tools. I mean, maybe still a third party, but a little closer.
Yeah, in Google Search Console, some people are just like, I don't know, it's not like super accurate, and like it's sampled and all of that stuff, and it's like, it's close.
Better than nothing.
Yeah, it's better than nothing.
Yeah, and maybe better than all great tools in Ahrefs and SRM, but a little bit closer. And that should be, I think, maybe one of the takeaways is like keep trying to get closer however you can with your clients, and I think that can only help you. So this has been great. I think one thing I always like to leave people with is something actionable. So would love to hear what's maybe a tip, a tool, a resource, like something that's making you especially excited today about your work. What would you leave people with?
I was going to say the goal values. I think that's definitely one thing that I've been harping on lately, I guess, is just really like when you can show clients your actual value in dollars, that is key, because a lot of times people just see SEO as like this fluffy thing. Like not always, but sometimes they see it as something that's like cool for a little bit, and then they don't see it as an actual revenue driver. I think it can assist conversions too. I just think it's so important to be able to have those goal values so you can see how much revenue it drove directly and assisted. And I think it's just really important to set up those goal values. So definitely I would tell people to go into their Google Analytics, if you use Google Analytics as your, your tracking, and set up those goal values. Use those tips for trying to get your client to kind of decide on something that's a good enough value.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think it's especially true in content marketing, I think, is because a lot of people, especially, I mean, I've even seen this in the last 10 years, a lot of people throw up these blogs and then realize 5 years later, maybe even 2 years later, it didn't make any money. So you have to, not just, even if the traffic numbers look sexy, like if it's not actually driving value, they're eventually going to cut it. Someone will eventually look at their report 6 months from now and see it, right? So yeah, Cami, this has been great. I definitely suggest following Cami. Check out Soapboxly. She's an up-and-comer, legit, really smart content marketer, so I'm excited to see more content from you.
Thank you so much for having me. This was great.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, if you like this, please give us a thumbs up, subscribe, and let us know what you thought in the comments. Thanks for watching.